Good morning. This is your 28storms.com tropical update for this June 3rd, 2011. The National Hurricane Center is continuing to highlight two separate areas worthy of possible mention for tropical development over the next 48 hours. One continues to be the remnants of 93L Invest, which is now located in the western Gulf of Mexico, and we still have disorganized shower and thunderstorm activity over much of the central and western Caribbean. Here is the latest surface analysis product from the Tropical Analysis and Forecast branch. And as you can see, they've depicted that weak low in the southwest Gulf of Mexico. And we have a secondary, much stronger area of low pressure down to 1008 millibars. And it's also beginning to interact with a westward moving tropical wave axis. Here is a quick look at the Gulf of Mexico, and as you can see, the remnant circulation of 93L is still persistent, and it's located due south of Beaumont and Baytown, Texas, and it's expected to continue moving in a general westward track more toward northern Mexico and extreme southern Texas. As you can see, there's really not much left of this system convective-wise, and that's going to remain the case as the mid-levels of the atmosphere really are not that moisture-laden at this current time. Now, in terms of moisture, we certainly don't have a lack of that in the central and western Caribbean. As this loop starts over, you'll notice that this was a tropical wave coming out of the eastern Caribbean as it's moved into the central and western Caribbean, and there's a strong influx of precipitable water and moisture. You can see this quite clearly on the latest water vapor imagery. Obviously, much of the Caribbean is now being overtaken by a lot of moisture and a lot of activity, a lot of convective activity now. And we're starting to see a little bit more in the way of disorganized convection, a little bit closer to the surface low pressure center compared to what we saw yesterday. If you recall yesterday, the low level circulation was a little bit more off to the west, closer to the coast of Honduras and Nicaragua, while we've had a lot of convection more so concentrated over Hispaniola. And if we look at the latest trends today, we'll notice that the low level circulation is a bit closer to Jamaica, and all of the remnant activity in terms of convection that was originally over Hispaniola has continued off toward the northeast, but now we have new convection beginning to fire up closer to that surface low pressure center that once again has moved a little bit more to the northeast today. Here is the latest 850 millibar vorticity analysis from the SIMS website, and as of this last update, it still shows the highest concentration of low-level vorticity a little bit more toward the southwest. But I fully suspect with the next update we'll see a bit of a northeast propagation closer to Jamaica, where it looks like the low pressure is now organizing just a little bit on the latest satellite imagery. Here are the latest Caribbean surface observations as of 9 a.m. and you can kind of sort of make out where a broad area of low pressure may be located. Unfortunately, we don't have that many surface observations in this region of the world, but you can make out with the overall wind observations and pressure readings that we do have some overall broad circulation and low pressure over the greater Antilles and areas just to the south. Pattern-wise, we've still seen some very gradual improvement in the upper level pattern that would support tropical development. Here's the latest shear analysis, and as you can see, little by little and day by day, that upper level ridge located over the central Caribbean becomes just a little bit more defined as it ever so gradually begins to expand more toward the north. You can see that better with the shear tendency map, and we do have lower shear values now beginning to show up a little bit south of Jamaica, whereas areas just to the north closer to the upper level trough axis still has wind shear values in excess of 60 to 70 knots. Now this morning I took a good look at all of the latest model guidance from several model members, including the GFS, Canadian, UK Met, NOGAPS, and European models, and they all really show the same general idea over the next 6 days. None of them any longer show much in the way of tropical development. That's not to say it can't happen, and it's also not to say that they aren't showing a suspect area of broad low pressure continuing to persist in the central and western Caribbean. So we still have things to watch, and there's still things to look for. So this is the latest 6Z GFS sea level pressure forecast. This is the central and southwest Caribbean. As you can see, as of right now, we're stuck with a broad area of low pressure. And as I set this into motion, you will not see much in the way of intensification, and some of that southwest and northeast wind shear will continue to force some convection off toward the northeast, and every now and then you'll get some brief low pressure spin-ups along this trough boundary, but nothing significant, whereas the dominant area of low pressure remains located over the central and western Caribbean. Here's the 850 millibar vorticity forecast so you can see things a little bit better. and some moisture and activity is being stretched off toward the northeast, but even by day 7 we still have some remnant activity over the central and western Caribbean. In the mid-levels we can see why this is occurring. This is the current time frame, and as you can see there's a pretty strong trough exiting New England and it's about to dive south, and that's partly responsible for maintaining and enhancing the western Atlantic troughiness that we've seen in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And as I set this in motion, it's going to continue to help funnel some of that moisture out of the Caribbean and into the central Atlantic. But in the meantime, we also have a subtropical ridge area over the southeast United States, so anything left behind will get caught down there for quite a while with a lack of strong steering currents, and therefore any low pressure that does remain in the Caribbean will not move very much over the next week. This is the latest GFS shear forecast, and as you can see we still have that strong trough causing a lot of shear just north of the developing upper level ridge over the southern and central Caribbean. And the models continue to keep things somewhat interesting as this upper level ridge waxes and wanes and becomes a little deeper and more intense before being shunted back toward the south a little bit by that trough. So it's going to be a never-ending battle. But as of right now, the rest of the tropics are fairly quiet, so the stuff in the Caribbean is really the only game in town, and we have plenty of time to watch it. And frankly, I don't think anything is going to happen too dramatically over the next couple of days. It might just have some potential down the road in the medium range. As of right now, that potential isn't that high, but as always, we're talking about the tropics, so it's worth keeping an eye on. Alright, well that's your update for today. Check back tomorrow for more detailed analysis and videos.